Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Nik Erramilli is on a mission to flip the traditional script on legal advice, turning lawyers from reactive problem solvers into proactive growth partners, whether he's guiding entrepreneurs through high-stakes deals or helping student athletes navigate NIL contracts. Nik brings a sharp, strategic, and client-first approach to every legal move. If you're a founder, investor, athlete, or real estate pro, this episode's for you. We'll talk about how legal strategy can fuel your growth, save your business, and even drive profits when you are correctly done, or done correctly. Either way, let's jump into this. What's up, man?
Dean, I appreciate you. Thank you guys at LeDuc for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So I want to jump into the NIL stuff, and let's hone into one. Give me your talking to a 5-year-old. This is what NIL is and what it means.
On a very broad level, it's how amateur athletes can make profits and make money based on their skills and what they do. Okay. So why is it important? It alters the landscape of something that we all hold near and dear to our hearts, which is college sports, high school sports, something that a lot of Americana grows up loving. And this moment in time is going to change how all of that looks for a long time.
So this idea, would you say that now with social media being more of a thing for these younger athletes, this is why it's becoming such a hot topic right now?
You could say social media has a lot to do with it. It will have a huge role in the monetization of NIL. What NIL actually stands for, to back it up, is name, image, likeness, right? So that means an amateur athlete can now profit off of their name, image, and likeness, which ultimately means publicity, which means advertising and marketing.
And this might be the perfect time to talk about speaking with your lawyer before you start getting these contracts. How often do you get on the phone with someone that's like, hey, I just signed this contract, would you look over it? And they've already given away some of these things before.
Well, how often it happens a lot. Okay. It happens all the time. Ideally, you want to be ahead of it. Yeah. And what's amazing about this space that we're operating in, this NIL space, is it's moving very quickly. So these contracts that are coming out, that people are seeing, it is of the utmost importance now to have somebody look at those, to make sure you're at least educated on it. And that's what we do at Erramilli Law Group. You know, we at least educate. That's the first thing. So that whether you're on the athlete side or on the institution side, you know what you're getting into.
Yeah. What brought you to that? What was it? I mean, obviously you weren't thinking about that when you started law school, but what brought you to really focusing in on the sports stuff?
You know, I really can take it back to the origin of my law school and my legal interest, and it's marrying my curiosities with my professional career. I was always a very curious person. That's what drove me to become a lawyer. I think you have to have an interest in a wide variety of things if you're going to be a litigator. Okay, if you're going to go and one day go to trial over a trademark and the next day go to trial over a construction dispute, right? You have to become a subject matter expert on so many things. And I always loved sports growing up. Okay. So this took it to the next level where it was like, this isn't just a curiosity of mine. This is a passion of mine. I played football and basketball growing up. Right. And now as a lawyer to say, I can actually be relevant in this field that I've been following for decades is such a cool moment for me.
Yeah. When is it? Because you just got back from Vegas.
Yep.
Give me a little how that went, and how many people were interested in what you had to say.
Yeah, it's fascinating because never before in my experience and my understanding has a multi-billion-dollar industry, okay, which is amateur athletics, whether you're talking on the college level or high school level, been run by so little guidance, okay? So that's why I went to Vegas, is because this whole industry really needs somebody who can have an eye towards where are these lawsuits that are governing this area? Where are they going? Okay. How are they going to unfold as the next 3 to 5 years plays out?
Yeah.
So I went to Vegas. I went to Summer League. I was meeting with all these agents, these NBA agents out there, and they're all, they're jockeying for athletes and trying to sign athletes and stuff like that. And I go up to them and I say, listen, I'm really not here for that. What I'm here to do is tell you that as an agent, if you're not reaching down into the amateur ranks, if you're not already recruiting in that space, you're already kind of behind the eight ball. And to recruit in that space, to grow a business in that space, you need an expert NIL outside counsel. So that was my deal there. And I just received so many looks like, you're right. And I can't believe I didn't even think of that.
Do you think because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but has it just shifted not too long ago that amateur athletes could even make money off of what they do?
Yeah, Dean, it's fascinating because it's actually been less than 3 months that it became quote unquote legal.
Okay.
All right. Now, everybody's been assuming and operating under the pretense, or really, it's a fair assumption that it was going to be approved. Okay.
Yeah.
Because there was this case out of the Northern District of California called the House versus NCAA case. It was the big case where if you're reading the tea leaves, it was always leading up to this point where in some capacity, this is going to be legalized. But when did the ink dry on the paper? Less than 3 months ago, when
Wow.
it was officially legalized.
So to say you're on the leading edge right now, is fair.
I like to think so. Yeah, I like to think so. Yeah, it's very exciting.
So when do you think athletes should start thinking about this? Like in high school and in college? When should they start keeping in mind the preparation of reaching out to someone like you?
I think it should be as soon as you're taking sports seriously.
Yeah.
You know, if you're doing this on a real level, which so many kids are now,
Right.
you're going to have people approaching you already. You know, you're going to have people approaching you, and the beautiful thing is, the way this case out of California got resolved, it allocated money to all the other sports, I'll call them, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we think of college sports, we have the behemoths, right? Football, basketball. But there's allocations now to all these other sports. So if you're an athlete and you love golf, you love track, I work with track athletes in the Atlanta area, who are high schoolers, and if you love these other sports and you want to go quote unquote pro in these other sports, you can now, because there's an allocation in the law for you.
What adjustment was that? What did they open up to allow for this to be a thing?
So what they did was they said, okay, it's been decades and decades where we've all been talking about how student athletes are students first and they're not athletes. So
Right.
that was this was this kind of story we were all being told, so to speak. And but ultimately what everybody knew is these sporting events were driving incredible money and driving incredible revenue to these schools. So this case, this House versus NCAA case, what they said was, listen, we're going to create basically a pool of money, okay? And it's going to be based on a variety of factors, things like ticket sales, things like TV deals, things like the revenue shares that the NCAA gives. And we're going to average what a typical school gets, and we're going to take a percentage of that, about 20% of that. And that's going to be the school's salary pool for athletes, okay? So now everyone is estimating that's going to be around $20 to $22 million, okay? And what we're saying now is that is money that a school can pay directly to its athletes, okay? And the other thing is, there are a list of sports where that is applicable. So now you have schools like a perfect example is my wife and her family. They're all from Lubbock, Texas, so they're big Texas Tech fans. And you might think, okay, we're going to allocate most of this money to football, right? But Texas Tech just did a huge multi-million-dollar deal with their star softball pitcher. Okay, so they've made their pitcher a multimillionaire softball pitcher.
Wow.
So that's what I say, these, as an amateur, like, you can be in these other sports and it can still be a professional career for you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Cause like you're saying, I don't think anyone ever thought of what they were doing in that way until these kind of abilities were there.
Mm-hmm.
Previously a girls softball team, you're not looking at, all right, career.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. You might not in a way that can be, I guess, financially as lucrative as other sports.
To this level.
Yeah. So what's interesting about that is, if you're a sports fan, I mean, like I said, I'm a big sports fan. If you're a sports fan, I think this is a really cool moment, because the best athletes, the best sporting product out there, I think, comes from watching great athletes do great things. Okay. And that can be somebody just running so fast, like a Usain Bolt, just blowing people out of the water. It can be somebody throwing the ball 60 yards, Patrick Mahomes, but the best athletes no longer have to pick sports that traditionally drove revenue, right? And so it can make these other sports really interesting now, which I think is really cool if you're a fan of sports on a larger scale.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, and we get the people that may be so dynamic in those areas actually getting some support to continue getting even more dynamic in those areas.
Exactly.
Which, that's just gonna, I wouldn't say even the playing field. Obviously, the football and the baseball that stuff's it's gonna be its thing. Basketball and football is gonna probably reign for a bit, but I think that opens the door for so much, because the whole world's kind of moving into these kind of niche markets. So the more we have these kind of abilities and these people moving into these things that are getting that kind of support, the whole sport, the whole of that sport is going to get more attention in general.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, I can speak anecdotally about it, what happened in my life.
Yeah.
When Texas Tech made their run to the softball World Series last year, suddenly I was glued to those games. It was like, this pitcher is incredible. I mean, she's carrying this team. She's pitching entire games, back to back to back to back to back games. And you're like, I've never seen this before. It's incredible. So, I mean, it's just slowly the externalities will flow to other sports, which is really fun for anybody who's keyed into that kind of stuff.
What would you say are some of the red flags for people that are getting some of these contracts coming their way that they should be looking out for? Obviously, reach out to someone like you first, but if you've got them and you're trying to do this yourself or looking at stuff, what should they really be making sure when they're looking at these contracts?
I think the first thing is that everything is changing day by day in this field. Okay. I mean, I think it's been less than 3 months, like I said, since that settlement came out. But even since then, there have been regulations, reversals of that regulation. There's a committee that's supposed to lay a framework over all of this stuff. They tried. They immediately got threatened with lawsuits in the tens and hundreds immediately. So then they recanted that. You had the president just sign an executive order last week about this stuff. So things are just happening. I mean, there's just layers being stacked on this. So the first thing, to answer your question, is be careful about long-term deals right now. Okay. Because what happens today is not going to be the law tomorrow. Okay. Sure. If you are interested, if you're just locked in, you want to do a long-term deal, at least do this for yourself. Most schools right now are advertising these deals and making themselves the exclusive marketing agents for these athletes. That is not a requirement. An athlete can say, you can market my NIL rights for me, but I'm not going to sign a contract where you're my exclusive marketing agent.
Yeah.
And I think the reason that's important is because if you come into a place and you're at a certain level and you're being offered a certain deal, you never know, when you're 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, you could grow over a summer. You get stronger over a summer. You become a different adult between your freshman and senior year,
Sure.
right? And so if you lock yourself into this exclusive thing, you don't give yourself the flexibility you need, right? So that's just one example of, as this field is evolving, we're trying to shine some light on paths that we know as business litigators, we read these cases all the
Yeah.
time. We know how to walk that path, try and maximize the benefits, and put the downsides as far away as we can.
Yeah, because my mind goes to the place that most people are going to sign these contracts, unfortunately, based from a fear place of going, oh, nothing better is going to come than this. And then you put your name on it. And again, like you said, next year, you're quadrupling what you were doing the year before, and you've got all kinds of stuff coming at you, but you can't do a thing.
You can't do a thing because you've signed your exclusive rights over. And this is something specifically out of that settlement. The athlete is empowered to retain their own counsel, their own agent, which is, we advise people on both sides. We advise institutions, okay? We advise athletes. And so we get to see some of these contracts that are being put in front of athletes on a very high level that, they're like the first of their kind. It's like the first draft, literally, of this contract.
Man, I could probably stay in the NIL space with you for quite a while because you're really one of the first ones I've talked in this much detail with it. But let's flip for a second, because
Sure.
you cover the gamut when it comes to types of businesses in the way that you've kind of switched your approach to what the lawyers really used for, right? Give me one. What gave you this perspective shift of going, I don't want to keep being called after stuff's done, and it's hard for me to do stuff. I would like to start preemptively having these conversations with our clients about XYZ so that we're already prepared for anything that could come.
Yeah.
And saying it out loud sounds silly because it's like, of course, why would you not? Like, why would you do
not?
this?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what was the flip on that?
Perspective. I have been on the inside of businesses, okay? And so I was an in-house counsel before I started my own firm. And as an in-house counsel, I got to see how business owners view their attorneys, which is a perspective that usually lawyers get later in their career. They usually get it after they've retired from private practice, they go in-house, right? And then most of them have this realization, oh, we're actually not beloved by our clients.
Yeah.
It's like, what did you think this whole time? But that was like day one. That was my perspective. I was like, lawyers are not beloved by their clients. So that was the first perspective. I realized when I saw the market, I realized, okay, you could have a great advantage if you have a good relationship with your attorney. How can I create that relationship? Okay.
Yeah.
So what I started to do is just become more accessible. All right. When I started, after I left my in-house counsel place, I just started becoming more accessible and being accessible in a way where it doesn't mean suddenly you're on the clock with somebody. Okay. If we're really getting down to it, you're just being accessible for the sake of being an asset to somebody. Okay. Because then they will reach out to you beforehand because they realize it's actually worth calling Nick. It's actually worth calling my attorney to just have this quick text, this quick call. Right. And then what you realize over time is most people are reasonable and they realize when something big is coming, people's time is valuable. So then when you get down to, hey, these are your attorney's fees, this is how much it costs. It's like, okay, well, you've been accessible to me in these small things. Now let's actually start a long-term relationship. And I'll say the last thing about that is one of the most rewarding parts of my professional career is the fact that my clients are these relationships that I watch them grow. I watch them become more and more successful for a decade plus. I'm watching them grow from, barely having this much business to now having these, and that's because of that availability and just staying with them.
What do you think is I mean, it almost sounds similar to what we were just talking about, the athlete that signs the page because it's like I don't know if I'm ever going to see that money again like
Hmm.
that. But I would say most likely the business owner's going, I don't want to dish out that kind of money right now to have these kind of conversations. And unfortunately, that usually means when they're in the worst situation, they have to dish out the money to make up for the stuff they didn't do earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you say that's fair? That's probably what the fear is. Of I'd rather save the money instead of trying to preemptively have my lawyer and call and have this conversation.
I think there's a lot of fears, and we're working to erode those fears.
Yeah,
Okay. But I think it's what you said earlier to me, Dean. It's becoming a trustworthy person on a human level first,
fair.
right? Any relationship, right? You want to be trusted so that when they finally say, okay, what is the tax here? And you say,
Yeah,
look, you know me, and I'm going to be fair with you, but this is what you're looking at. All right. And we're always balancing pros and cons. We're
hmm
always balancing. So, but you're right. I mean, it's not a readily accessible industry to every business owner. Okay. It's just not,
yeah.
but it can be. That's what we're working towards.
If a founder had to put their money into one thing, what should their priority be?
Structuring a good partnership agreement.
That's fair.
Uh, that's the first thing you have to do it. You know, people get into business with other people. Sometimes the other person is the money, so to speak, their
Yeah,
funder. Sometimes they're the person who's going to work uh, to gain equity in whatever this position is, and those agreements have to be structured early. And it's very much like this. Um, as athletes, in this NIL space, I come back to it because they are viewing their careers as a business now. More and more athletes are just becoming more and more sophisticated about how they view what their potential is, right?
yeah,
And the athletic portion of their potential is really just chapter one for a lot of them, right? And then they're thinking legacy, they're thinking philanthropy, they're thinking post career,
right.
okay? And that's why structuring this stuff is really, really important because you start to see people have these 7, 8 year plans for a high schooler. I was just having a conversation with the athletic director of a big high school here in Atlanta, one that puts out D1 athletes every year. And I was just talking to him. I said, "What is your biggest fear for your students here?" And he goes, "They're locking them up for a long time, and they're locking them into these contracts for a long time. You know,
God.
they're and these kids are 15, 16. They don't know what
Yeah.
that partnership is going to look like."
And I would assume, most likely the parents, again, law's almost like its own secret service. When if you're not coming from that kind of background, you're not looking at these things and going, "Oh, yeah, this is great." You just automatically see, "Oh, number for my kid, that's awesome."
Yeah,
You see the potential of greatness. You don't realize all of these horror stories that could come along with it.
especially because there are that whole industry has become corrupted in some way
Yeah,
because there's a lot of pressure on parents. There's a lot of pressure on, first of all, the athlete, the kid, to succeed. There's a lot of pressure on parents to provide all of this stuff. These trainers, these really high level facilities, you have to get
sure.
it in. And so when you get that number in front of you and your mind kind of just starts, it's like getting mush. You're like, I never thought I'd see that many, whatever. And that's where I think at least just having a moment to say, what does this really mean? Is there somebody who's educated enough in this space to talk to? That's what we do. We advise these parents and these athletes all the time. At least just to say, think about it this way. You
Yeah,
know, you know. Um, there's an inherent loyalty that comes with a relationship like that versus you trust somebody who has like an agency firm or something that has their own attorneys. Whose loyalty does that agent and that attorney, where do their loyalties actually lie?
yeah, yeah, man. It's like It's like the blessing in disguise because, someone just literally gave you the keys to the kingdom, but they're like, you can have these keys, but it's only to the bathroom. It's a really pretty bathroom. Our bathroom sucks. You make this commitment and now you don't get to go see the rest of the kingdom and someone's offered you the other kingdom, but you just signed away.
It's going to be really interesting because one of the main issues we're going to solve is what happens when that conflict arises. Okay.
Yeah.
What happens when a kid is signed to Nike, but the college he wants to go to is an Adidas school? Okay. There's going to be either a lawsuit or some sort of discussion that is very heated at the core of that, with a lot of people with a lot of financial interests at play. And our firm is the firm that's going to likely litigate something like that, and it's coming. You can just see that train coming down the tracks, as these kids can sign earlier and earlier. But nobody's really addressing it. And that's why this whole space, because it's like the palimpsest was this settlement agreement. Then you have this random regulation, and then you have some executive order. It's all out of whack. Normally you have a set of laws maybe passed by Congress or something, and then you have things that stack on top of it, right? Here, you're almost going in reverse order where the whole area is being regulated by court cases. So you just have these like random instances of rulemaking happening.
Right. Where do you see the future going for this? Like, I would say 5 years down the road, but as fast as this stuff's going, let's say 2 years down the road, one of these kind of cases come up, and the landscape's going to change. What do you see this kind of being?
I see the pendulum swinging back a little bit. Okay. I see anytime a new industry is just opened up, the floodgates just are open. There's just so much going through it. I see in the near future there being a market correction where we are holding athletes to account for the documents they sign, the paperwork they sign, because as I said to you, this technically wasn't legal until 90 days ago. So all of these pre-90 days ago deals, pre-settlement deals, I'll call them, they were just, nobody knew how to enforce them. Nobody knew if they were even enforceable. And there were some instances of people being taken advantage of. So I see the pendulum swinging back a little bit in the short term.
So those could possibly be on the chopping block, or at least the dissecting block, if looked at correctly, if they were signed pre this stuff going through.
Yeah. And I think those will be the first ones that will be scrutinized. Yeah.
Well, Nik, absolute pleasure having you on today, man.
I appreciate you, Dean. Thank you so much.
Where's the best place they can find you and the law firm?
We're on socials. We're at Erramilli Law Group on Instagram, on LinkedIn, erramillilawgroup.com, and we're on Facebook. It's not hard to find us. ERRAMILLI, Erramilli Law Group.
Fantastic. And like I said, I am very interested to see where this goes for you, my friend. It's a really cool space, and there's a lot coming out with it. So I'm excited to watch you grow.
Thanks, Dean. Pleasure being here.
All right. You guys know where to find him if you guys are looking for that kind of breakdown. Other than that, I'll see you all in the next one.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.